This episode is brought to you by Groove Washer, the best record cleaners and protective sleeves for your vinyl collection. Ask for the Groove Washer from your local shop or go to groovewasher.com. Discount code VinylGuide10. We're also brought to you by AudiofileUSA.com, the family-owned and operated used record shop that only sells excellent and near-mint vinyl records. Over 42,000 titles in stock. Search, dig, and load up your cart with your final vinyl upgrades at AudiofileUSA.com. And now, on with the show.
Listen up, all you record nerds. This is Donita Sparks from L7, and you're listening to The Vinyl Guide.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 344 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And wow, I'm back after a short break, brought on inadvertently by a computer crash. That was rather unexpected. However, I did get my new computer up and going, and also took the opportunity to install some fresh new recording equipment, as well as redo my office, which is sprawled over the last 7 years of doing this podcast. It absolutely needed a refresh, especially after COVID. So the good news is I'm now set up and ready to roll for another 7 years of the Vinyl Guide podcast. So hot damn, I'm looking forward to it. I shared an update, a whole bunch of pictures, even a secret episode on the Patreon page, patreon.com/vinylguide. So supporters of the show got a whole bunch of extra stuff up there. And this week we welcome Donita Sparks of L7 to the show. Donita and L7 are celebrating the 30th anniversary of their album Bricks Are Heavy with some special vinyl pressings and a tour. You can pre-order vinyl and get show tickets at l7theband.com. And of course today Donita shares all about the making of the Bricks Are Heavy album, as well as the other records of their catalog, the SubPop releases, the Epitaph album, the Scatter the Rats debacle with Pledge Music, and the Heroic Save with Joan Jett, the L7 documentary Pretend We're Dead, and other rare records, Yoko Ono, and lots more. And again, you could pre-order the vinyl reissue of Bricks Are Heavy at l7theband.com. Oh, and by the way, we have a commercial-free extended version of this interview available just for patrons of the show at patreon.com/vinylguide. Head up there now, support the show. You get all the extras, plus secret episodes, as well as now high-resolution interview files. That's right, patrons get twice the fidelity on their feed, so head up there now, patreon.com/vinylguide. Sign up to help support this show and enjoy all the extras. Oh, and finally, one last thing. Don't forget to subscribe to the Vinyl Guide podcast in your podcast app. You'll be able to enjoy nearly 350 other shows and interviews, including episode 334 with SubPop producer and engineer Jack Endino, episode 331 with John Dwyer of the OCs and Castleface Records, episode 301 with Amel and the Sniffers, episode 289 with Fred Armisen of Saturday Night Live in Portlandia, and tons of interviews with people like Thurston Moore, Beto O'Rourke, Mike Watt, Bruce Pavitt, and hundreds more. So subscribe to the Vinyl Guide in your podcast app, scroll, and enjoy. And without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Donita Sparks of the mighty L7. Here on the Vinyl Guide this week, we're speaking with Donita Sparks, and we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Bricks Are Heavy on Licorice Pizza Records. Limited pressings are available, l7theband.com. Donita, thanks so much for coming on. I'm so glad to see Bricks Are Heavy coming back to vinyl.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it too because we've had re-releases from other people. You know, it's weird. Like anybody can re-release something. They just contact Rhino Records and say, "Hey, can we release Hungry for Sync or one of our other albums or something?" And we're rarely contacted even about that, and so we don't have much involvement. But with Licorice Pizza, we're there. Like I'm having art meetings with them, and it's totally, they really care and they want to make this very special. And so this is something that the band's really excited about.
They're really involving you at this point. I've spoke to other artists that they have reissues of their albums they had no idea about. So the fact that I guess you're able to collaborate with Licorice Pizza and provide liner notes and backstories and more information and photos, that's huge.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's funny too, because sometimes people who re-release our stuff, they don't want to give us any copies. They don't want to even give us really a break on buying them to sell at our shows or anything. It's a very peculiar process. So this, we'll have some to sell at our shows. We've got a tour coming up of the US in October, where we will be performing the album front to back for the first time ever. And so it'll be very much a celebration of the 30th anniversary.
See, I used to have the CD of Bricks Are Heavy, and I used to play the bejesus out of it back in the day. And the one thing I'm excited about it being back on vinyl is because I finally get to look at the cover and figure out what the hell it is. All I remember was there was this small picture of green and yellow smears on it. What is the cover of Bricks Are Heavy?
Well, if you look closer, you can see some of our legs.
Right.
And what it was I had a not so brilliant idea of going, I was renting a house in Echo Park neighborhood of LA at the time. And I was like, hey, let's go in the alley and let's have some torches and we can just stand there and, screw around with the flames and the torches and everything. Now, keep in mind, Echo Park was really kind of run down at that time. And all of the palm trees just had these dead palm leaves. Like we could have lit up the whole friggin' neighborhood with this stupid photo shoot. However, it did turn out a little menacing looking and mysterious. Like you can't really tell what's going on, but we were all holding torches. And that's what the flame is, the yellow on it. Why it turned out so green, I don't know. But here's a spoiler. We fucked around with the color for the reissue, and it's going to be pretty trippy looking. It looks great.
Yeah, I think there's a few different versions that people can have. They could have the traditional if they want the green one that they grew up with, or they could have this new improved version, yeah?
Yeah, and with the green one, we did put a lyric sheet inside, because our lyrics are often misquoted. And once they're misquoted somewhere on the web, they are misquoted for eternity. So I was insistent upon putting the lyrics on this one because, I feel so bad when somebody will cover an L7 song and it's so great, and yet they get one of the lines wrong and it breaks my heart. I don't even tell them, hey, that wasn't actually the lyric. But so we're just trying to, hopefully fans out there will correct some of these lyrics.com or whatever, because I have no idea how to do that.
Now, were the Bricks Are Heavy tapes still available, the multi-tracks? Did you have access to all the materials that were created back in 92?
Yes, the guy at Licorice Pizza, Kerry Brown, is amazing. He knows he knows everybody at Rhino and Warner Brothers and all that stuff. He's very the cool side of the industry. And he, the same guy, Howie Weinberg, who mastered it the first time, remastered it this time. And some people are pro remastering, some people are anti remastering. But, with mastering, there are certain compressions and stuff that are popular in one era, but not so much in the next era. And so they're just kind of putting a fresh spin on this and kind of taking off some of the compression, I think, that was put on back in the day, which was kind of the era. They both sound great to me. I heard both of them and they're both amazing. So, but a little bit different. So that's kind of cool.
Well, if someone's a purist and they insist on that older version, there are copies from 92 that they can find somewhere. They'll be paying a few $100 for one, but it's still available if that's what they insist on.
Yes, that's true.
Now, with Bricks Are Heavy, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong here, Wargasm nearly had Yoko Ono on the track. Is that right?
It does have Yoko Ono on the track.
She is on the track. Okay.
Oh, yeah. She kicks off the guitar solo. She's going, wah, 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 wah. And it's from Live Piece in Toronto. And I had a brief conversation with her on the phone 30 years ago when we asked her permission to use that sample. And she was very kind and excused my nervousness and agreed to it. And she was into it. So, yeah, she's on there. she's on there twice. I think she kicks off the guitar solo and then she's at the end wailing.
Wow. Okay. All right. I thought that was an homage to Yoko. So that's actually Yoko. What is a conversation with Yoko Ono like? How hard is it to get her on the phone?
She got me on the phone. So that's, it was like, hey, Yoko Ono's going to be calling you tomorrow. And I'm like, what? And yeah, it was like, yeah, she wants to speak with you. And I'm like, wow, okay, cool. And, I'll save that conversation, which was very brief, for a later date. But she did give her blessing.
Oh, that's phenomenal. All right. Yeah. Was the name L7 there from the beginning?
L7, the name came about because we were trying to get a name for the band. And, I personally didn't want a name that had anything to do with our gender. I wanted people to hear us and not know if we were guys or chicks. And so I came up with L7, and it was just something we all agreed upon. You know what I mean? But I liked it because it was gender non-specific.
Mm-hmm. The labels that L7's been associated with are, some of the most renowned in indie history. CZ Records, Alternative Tentacles, SubPop, Waterfront, Epitaph, SST, Man's Ruin, all those different labels that L7's recorded with at one time or another. Do you have access to the tapes and the materials from each of those labels?
Did you mention Slash?
It was probably somewhere in there. Yeah, I think I rolled off a big list.
Slash is very important. Slash is the label that signed us after Sub Pop, and they put out they put out X, The Germs, Violent Femmes, and they were LA's cool label. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we were on Slash, and they had just gotten a deal with Warner Brothers for distribution, and so that was kind of a good indie meets major kind of bridge for us. Some of the other recording, a lot of the labels you mentioned, those were compilations, and we did a cover song for, so-and-so, and another cover song of Shonen Knife, and another cover song of what have you. There is a label out of the UK called Easy Action Records, and they gathered up all of those cover songs that we did with all these different labels, and they put out a double album of our cover songs, us covering the Germs and Ramones and yada, yada, yada. And it's called Fast and Frightening. And you can get that, I think, still at the Easy Action Records UK website.
Okay. Because I know they have a lot of live sets of L7. I think there's Detroit, and there's a couple of other albums that Easy Action puts out. So those are tapes that the band supplies to Easy Action?
No, Carlton at Easy Action in the UK, there's this loophole. Like if the live show was broadcast on the radio, they can release it without permission of the band or permission from Rhino Records, who now owns that Slash Warner catalog. Mm-hmm. But Carlton, it came to us first, and he was like, "Hey, do I have your blessing to do this?" And we were like, "Absolutely, that sounds great." So, if we were to release a live record in the United States, we would have to get permission from Rhino, because they, once you sign on the dotted line, they own every recording you make. So, but in the UK, there's a live loophole. So that's what he puts out a lot of live stuff. But he did do the legwork in gathering all of these, getting permission from SST and getting permission from all those other strays, all the stray labels out there that we were on due to being on compilations.
Wow. Oh, okay. All right. So even though he has the right to do it, he still wants the blessing of the artist and the support of he doesn't want to be, blunt or presumptive about it.
Yeah. I mean, he had to get permission from SST for all these covers we did, but he didn't have to get our permission to release the live stuff, but he did. So that was, so we love Carlton.
Okay. So with, for example, SST, L7 did a track Yummy Yummy, I think, on one of the compilations there. So what do you recall about the conversations of that compilation?
I don't even remember. We did Yummy, Yummy, Yummy. I Got Love in My Tummy. I've always been a fan of that kind of bubblegum pop stuff. And, but I do not remember. I don't remember the context of, of that record or what the theme was or why we chose that song. I have no idea, but it's on the Fast and Frightening compilation.
Right.
So, okay. I don't remember.
And then not long after, there was the L7 debut on Epitaph. How did L7 end up on Epitaph?
Jennifer Finch grew up in LA, and as a very young kid, like when she was 15 or whatever, she was already on the punk scene. And she knew Brett Gurewitz when, Bad Religion was just kind of starting out. And so, she told Brett she was in this band, because Susie and I had started the band a couple years before Jennifer was in it. And we were really struggling and everything. And then Jennifer was like, hey, I'm in this band L7. Would you be interested in recording us? And he said, yeah, sure. I'll put out your record. And so he produced our first album. And I think it was one of the first releases on Epitaph.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's all who you know.
It's all who you know. That one was who you know for sure. So, because I don't even think we were ready to make an album yet, but we stuck our toes in the water and did it. And it was a really cool experience.
The cover of the debut, it has no words. It's just an image of you guys. I assume that was shot during a show somewhere. What's the story of that album cover?
The story of the album cover is we were playing a show on the West Side, and Al Flipside, who was the editor-in-chief at Flipside magazine, which was like, it was the punk rock Time magazine. It was like every punk rocker across the United States had a Flipside in their bathroom. You know what I mean? So, or on their coffee table, or both if they're small. The editor was there to review our band and to take photographs. And that was a photograph that he took. And we really liked it and got his permission to use it as the front album cover. Yeah,
because I know there's no words to it. So someone coming into a record shop may not know what that is. So was there any challenges with that? Any conversation about not having the name of the band or album or anything on it, or just didn't care?
Well, I don't know. That was probably a poor decision. I think if you buy it in the shrink wrap, there may be a sticker on it, especially the reissue that Epitaph did. And it was a very small run at first. And the first run, the photograph had my head cut off. And I hit the fucking roof about that. I was like, how can you cut my head off, man? Like it wasn't Epitaph, it was their designer or whatever, but it's like, I was very pissed off about that. And so every re-release since then, and when it came out on cassette and on CD, my head is there. So, but in all honesty, when my head was cut off, it was a cooler design. So, there you go. You cut your head off and I don't know what I'm trying to phrase, but anyway, so it was cooler with my head cut off, but my ego just would not allow that. So the head stays in the picture.
Now, you must forgive me because this is a record podcast and we get a bit nerdy. So you're more than welcome to hold up a yellow or red card if I ask a question that kind of like, all right, that's way outside of my radar here. Okay. Do you recall the writings or the phrases that were in the runout groove of the record?
Was it of which record?
Oh, sorry, the first one, the Epitaph.
Was it Play Loud, Drop Trow?
Yes, there you go. Play Loud, Drop Trow.
Uh-huh.
Very good. And the other side, The Cheese Stands Alone.
I don't know. You know what's so funny too is like at that point in time, Spinal Tap we were referencing Spinal Tap constantly. We called our first tour Break the Iron Wind. It was so Spinal Tap has such truths in it. You know what I mean? When you're in a rock band, and we would just, I think a lot of that humor was spilling out as life imitates art, imitating life. It's a full circle. It's like Spinal Tap's imitating life. We're imitating Spinal Tap, but we're real. And so it was just, I think a lot of that stuff came into play.
Now there was the relocation to Seattle, and then the release for the SubPop Singles Club, Shove and Packin A Rod. Which came first, the move or the SubPop single?
We never moved to Seattle. We are LA. We've always lived in LA. We toured with a band that had been on Sub-Pop, or no, they weren't even signed to Sub-Pop yet. They knew some of the Sub-Pop guys, and we did a little West Coast tour with them. And when we got to Seattle, they told the Sub-Pop guys about us, and Jonathan Poneman and Bruce Pavitt came down to our show, and they liked the show a lot. And they said, "Hey, would you like to do one of our Sub-Pop Singles Clubs?" And we were totally thrilled because they were a very exciting label, bubbling up from the Seattle underground. And we ended up being January 1990 with the release of Shove. But we never moved up there. We were just one of the bands that they embraced that was not from Seattle. There was us, and I think the Fluid were from Boulder, Colorado. There were a couple bands that they brought into the fold, and we were one of them.
Okay. All right. I'm getting all my facts wrong today.
Yeah. No, you're not. Play loud, talk proud, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I did take plenty of notes. So that was recorded, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, with Jack Endino at Reciprocal. Was Shove and Packin A Rod, was that part of a larger session that, like Smell the Magic, or was that just for the focus of that Singles Club release?
Good question. I believe it was just for that Singles Club release. And when they heard it, they liked it very much. And they said, "Hey, we'd like to expand that to an EP." And so we did the EP with Jack. And then we did a few extra songs in LA to make it eventually an LP for a CD release. So it's mostly Jack, but it's not all Jack.
Right. Okay. But Smell the Magic, it originally came out as an EP. Why an EP and why not a whole LP at that time?
I don't know. I think that they were smart because they were, I remember them asking me, "Hey, so how many songs do you guys have? Do you think you're like an EP or an LP?" And I'm like, "Oh, we've got like 30 songs." And I was totally bullshitting because I really wanted them to do at least an EP. And so I was bullshitting them, and they probably called me on my bullshit and said, we'll just do an EP for now. But so yeah, listen, Sub Pop's mode of operation was cool, and it was smart, and it was old school, and it was like, okay, let's do a single. Let's see how that goes. Okay, are they ready to do a longer EP? Okay, they are. This is great. And then extend it into an LP or so it was just kind of it was well thought out, I think, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. After Smell the Magic, there was some unofficial EPs coming out from the John Peel sessions. Apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, apparently the band was so in demand at that point that Bootleggers were even getting involved.
We'll be back after these messages.
Well, hey everyone, I'm here to tell you about AudiofileUSA.com. Used records online that require no guesswork are all in excellent and near mint condition, many of them still sealed. Get your final vinyl upgrades at AudiofileUSA.com. Only the best and cleanest vinyl records. Here, do this now. Jump on their website, AudiofileUSA.com. Quickly search their incredible inventory of over 42,000 vinyl titles by artist, genre, even by record label, and fill up your cart with some glorious used records. Enhance your record collection with the best used records around. That's AudiofileUSA.com. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
Now we return to the program, already in progress.
No limits.
After Smell the Magic, there was some unofficial EPs coming out from the John Peel sessions. Apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, apparently the band was so in demand at that point that bootleggers were even getting involved.
Well, you know, it's funny because we would play a show in New York City, and the next day there would be bootlegs of that show on St. Mark's Place in New York, and but we just thought that was super exciting, you know, like, oh my God, like we're bootleg worthy, holy crap, you know. So we would see cassettes of our show from the night before, and then there were some, you know, real bootleggers putting out 45s and CDs and stuff like that. And, but, you know, at the time that was cool too, you know, and it is still cool. I've got copies of most of those bootlegs. I've never listened to them, but I was like, you know, I'll hold on to this one. It's got a really cool shot of Jennifer on the cover, or, oh my God, look at Susie there, you know? So, yeah.
That's got to be reassuring, because it's like, wow, okay, people are wanting more than we're putting out there. They want to hear more, and there's this whole other market, even though you're not involved in it or getting a piece of it or have any say so in it. The fact that people are going through that sort of trouble to get your art out there, that must feel all right.
No, I mean, the trench coat wearing bootleggers, I think it's amazing. However, you know, I'll tell you something that's so stupid, is that back in the day, you know, photographic cameras and video cameras were confiscated at venues, including by us ourselves. But I really regret now there's not more early footage of L7, because I see so much that's, you know, now it's commonplace to film shows on your iPhone or whatever, and that can be obnoxious if it gets overkill in the audience, of course. But like, I do wish we had more live footage of L7 back in the day, because when we would allow photographers to be there, it would be like on the first 3 songs. And that was barely when we got our mascara running. But by the end of the show, we looked like we were like, just had been swimming through a swamp with sweat and like makeup and just grunge all over us. And we were, resplendent in the rock and roll sweat of the club, and I just wish there was a bit more documentation of that.
I'm picturing the backside of the Smell the Magic EP, where it looks like all hell is breaking loose.
Yes, and it was breaking loose.
So moving from Sub Pop to Slash, what was the conversation like about moving away? Because Sub Pop seems like a really good fit for L7, but, you know, keen to hear what you guys were thinking at the time in terms of making that move.
You know, it was just, number one, we would get to a show and it would say Sub Pop L7. You know, it was Sub Pop was so like big in the underground. It was almost like their name was bigger than the bands that were on their label. You know, it was Sub Pop was very much a catchphrase of, hey, this is a cool show. You know what I mean? So that was just why is their name bigger than ours kind of bullshit. But what it really was, you know, we wanted better distribution. Our records from Sub Pop were in all the cool record stores and all the, you know, but you got the impression that, you'd have to special order it if you were ordering it from a Kmart or something. So, when Slash was courting us, and there was absolutely no bidding war over L7 at all. But the people at Slash were kind of friends of ours a little bit, and they were from the underground art scene in Los Angeles, and so we felt we'd still have that kind of aesthetic or that camaraderie as Sub Pop, but we'd get this big ass distribution under the Warner Brothers umbrella. So that was our thinking with that. And many other bands on Sub Pop did the same thing. For the Sub Pop guys, I think it was pretty devastating. We didn't mean it to hurt them or anything like that. We were not unhappy at Sub Pop, but we did think we would be more worldwide if we made the move, and it indeed happened. So we stand by that decision, even though we love Sub Pop.
Right. It wasn't them.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'll tell you, if Sub Pop had not happened for us when it did, we wouldn't have made it. We would not have been a band. We would have fell apart. We would have, because the Epitaph record didn't move the needle for us at all. Like they did a 2000 pressing and it didn't sell well. And it just, it was a brand new label. It's not the massive empire that it is now. Sub Pop had Sub Pop was happening, and the fact that we became kind of inner circle with their roster was like huge for us, and cool for them too. So it's not you, it's me in the breakup. What I'm saying?
Around 92, though, Sub Pop was still struggling a bit, as I understand. The whole, grunge Nirvana thing hadn't exploded at that point. So as I understand, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but, it was still a bit of a very small business at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I don't know the ins and outs, but I believe that some of Nirvana's contract was bought out, leaving Sub Pop with a pretty good chunk of change. So for Sub Pop, I can't speak for them, but the bad news is you lost Nirvana. The good news is we're paying you a lot of money for letting go of their contract. So kind of, bittersweet, I would imagine. And I think that they were, I think they probably felt kind of betrayed by a lot of the bands, but it was not, it really, for us, it was not to screw them over or anything.
Yeah. Well, we've had artists on that were at Sub Pop around this time, and they recall stories of, they'd get written a check and they'd run down to the bank to cash it because someone's going to get a bouncing check and they didn't want it to be them.
Oh yeah, Jennifer still has a bounce check in her ephemera collection. We've all got our L7 collections, and Jennifer actually has a check that bounced from Sub Pop.
What's the most interesting thing in one of those L7 collections?
Oh, that's a pretty good one. I have a paper plate that's signed. A fan got it for me, a Japanese fan, and it says, "Pretend we're dead, my fave," and it's signed by Joey Ramone. And I would say that that's probably, for me, probably one of the best things in my collection.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So when recording Bricks Are Heavy, it was recorded with Butch Vig. What did Butch Vig bring to the L7 sound?
Butch Vig, he, I would say, encouraged and made me feel comfortable more with adding a few more backing vocals, encouraging the kind of catchy pop stuff. That the band, we did not play around with that too much earlier on because I think we were just really, I know for me, I was just trying to prove that we were tough cookies and, fuck backing vocals and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Even though that's stupid, but I think that he encouraged us to let things get jangly at times, just minutely, but that was enough to make that album. It's got a lot, it's got a lot of catchy moments and catchy songs on that album. And I think it's got a cool balance with some of these gnarly lyrics with this kind of rock with melody musical bed, Mm-hmm. So I think I think it works. And he's just another guy, another great producer in the sense of like, no bullying, no making you feel like shit, just encouraging and like confidence building. I think that's what like bands need, confidence building in a session. And if you're one of these browbeating jerks, it's like, you're not, it's just going to be a bad vibe. And the results probably aren't going to be that great, but he was just encouraging and cool.
Mm. He seems to be that sort of guy, almost a guru.
Yeah. And also like, it's part psychologist too. You know what I mean? Like, oh, so-and-so seems like they're a little insecure today. Okay. I'm going to give her, a little more, love, encouragement today or whatever, and I'm not just saying that because we're women, it's like guys need that too, of course.
Of course.
So, so it's good to have someone who's effective and who also can navigate psychological moments.
Someone who has a lot of empathy and awareness so they could actually understand, they could read the room correctly.
Good point. Yes, he could read the room, and he also had his recording chops, which were great. And he also had his musical chops because he had been in bands for years and, almost got signed or maybe did get signed to a major label at one point. Like he knew what he was doing. And so therefore was a great leader for us and the engineers on site,
Mm. Now, as I understand, while Bricks Are Heavy was being recorded, this is right in the middle of the rise of Nirvana and the mass media embracing that form of music. What was the reaction of Butch and the band to that sort of change at that time?
As far as Butch goes, I think he was probably very excited. He's like this humble Midwest guy, and it was not going to his head at all. He was just, excited to work with L7 next and blah, blah, blah. And then as he was working with us in the studio, that's when Nevermind came out. And then it just was huge. But there was so much talk in the air about how great Nirvana were and how great this record was. And it came as no surprise to me. I think it was blowing Butch's mind because he was becoming famous as a producer, like money-making producer. And I think that he had his nose to the grindstone in the studio for so many years, recording Midwest underground bands. And now he had this huge record and he was getting tons of attention, tons of work, tons of, probably making good bread. And so it was very good for him. And it was cool for us too. But I think that a lot of people at that time had this expectation that our album was going to do maybe even close to what Nirvana did. And it did not at all. So it was like, we weren't disappointed, but I think maybe some people at the label thought maybe it might be a bigger record than it was. But, and in that note, we never really got an accounting for that record. We don't know if it's gone gold or not, but we've started to hand out gold records to people who were involved. We made our own gold records and we're handing them out to people who were involved in the record. So you'll be seeing some little video tidbits of that in the upcoming months to celebrate the record as well.
Well, and it's probably a good time to let people know that they can get their own copy of Bricks Are Heavy that's gold pressing at l7theband.com.
Yes. Or Licorice. There's a link to it at l7theband.com. Yeah, right. We got real gold record, real fake gold records for the people who were involved in the album, and then gold vinyl for the people buying the deluxe 30th anniversary. So yeah, it's a running theme of a gold record tantrum that we're having, because we sure would love to have one, even if it's fake.
Now, the song Shit List, it has universal appeal, but was it written about anyone in particular?
Oh, it was going. It was written about certain political things that were going on at the time. It was written about certain people, that piss you off in the day. I literally had a whole list that song was about, just for my inspiration. But yeah, it was from political jerks to industry jerks to friends who were jerks, and an entire jerk off of people.
A circle jerk.
A circle jerk of assholes. But yeah, so it's universal.
It's timeless too. But there wasn't one person, individual event that kind of tilted it over and made you think, you know what, fuck this, I'm expressing myself on this.
No, there was not one specific incident. A lot of times on songs that I've written, there is one specific incident. Like Mr. Integrity on Bricks Are Heavy, that stemmed from one particular incident. And, but I used a bunch of different, some of my best songs come out of someone being a total insensitive, insulting jerk to me. And so that one came out of something like that. But then you turn it around and you make it somehow rocking and joyous, and it makes the whole situation, water under the bridge.
Fair enough. That looked at the. I know we only have a limited time left. Let me jump around to a couple of other spots that are going to be very interesting for record nerds. Okay. Omaha to Osaka. That was on Man's Ruin Records, Frank Kozik's label. Around that time, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Frank was struggling with his record label there, and there are no vinyl versions, but only test pressings of this release. Is that your recollection as well?
It is, and sadly, one of the reasons why we went to Frank with this, because those were our recordings. He didn't record those. We recorded them and mixed them and stuff like that. But he was doing such beautiful, beautiful packaging for vinyl. Mm-hmm. And that's why it was such a bummer. Like, he didn't tell us he was struggling, kind of thing. And then when it only came out on CD, it was like, what the hell, man? So no. And then I've seen some test pressings on eBay and stuff. And I'm like, okay, what the hell is going on here? But whatever. We love Frank. We were hoping for vinyl. Didn't come out on vinyl. And I do love the artwork that he did for that, which was the suggestion came from me of having it like an American Gothic, but it was a Japanese woman instead of a farming white woman.
Mm-hmm. Is there any hope that Omaha to Osaka will be reissued at some point? Because I know with a lot of the Man's Ruin catalog, that is being, Frank's been great about sharing that with people. I think he gave Melvins back their stuff. He's been giving stuff back to artists to be able to do what they can with it.
Well, I think that would be wonderful to get that and to put that out on vinyl. So
yeah.
We'll be putting them up too. So there.
All right.
Heads up, man.
There, you got plans for 2023 now. Slap Happy. The album came with a comic book. Can you tell me the story of that comic book?
Slap Happy also came with a vandalism stencil. We were encouraging people to spray paint our logo wherever they could. So it actually came with a L7 logo stencil, ripe for vandalizing. So yes, and it came with a comic book as well.
Wow. Okay, that's a fantastic idea. Did you see many stencils out there? Did you know if many people used that stencil?
We were encouraging people through our website to send in photos of where they vandalized, and very cool stuff. And one, of course, came in on an ass cheek. So So that's always a joy when the logo comes in on an ass cheek.
Okay, Scatter the Rats. You guys got back together after many years of laying dormant. When did you first realize that there was this sizable audience out there that really missed the band?
It was, I started a Facebook page, and I think it was Allison Robertson from the Donnas who shared it on the Donnas page, like, hey, check it out. L7's got a new Facebook page. And it was just massive, like thousands and thousands of people started clicking on our Facebook page and writing comments and stuff. Because we didn't even have any sort of way to contact us or anything. We didn't have management. We didn't have, and the Facebook page was for archival stuff, photographs and things like that. And then we just realized all the love that was out there. And there were a lot of YouTube videos of our stuff and that people had posted just from like their VHS recordings from MTV and stuff. And, it was fans kind of building up this surge. And then we kind of talked about it and said, well, it's kind of now or never. And now 7 years later, we're still doing it. So.
Yeah. What was that first conversation like? The four of you in the same room for the first time in like a decade or more?
No, I was gathering materials for our documentary, which is called L7 Pretend We're Dead. It's on Amazon and stuff. You can see it. But I was reaching out to everybody like, hey, would you be interested in doing an interview for the documentary? And do you have any photographs that you would like included, or yada, yada, yada? And that kind of got us talking on via email at first. And then it kind of got into, well, would we ever consider doing some shows? Because we're getting some offers from festivals. And so, after some sleeping on it for a few months, everybody was sort of on board. So that was pretty cool.
And Scatter the Rats, it was developed through Pledge Music. And that worked out for you, I guess. A lot of bands got screwed over by Pledge Music, but Scatter the Rats, not a problem in that, yeah?
Oh, we got horribly screwed over by Pledge Music. They're horrible frauds. And they got away scot-free. They ripped off a lot of bands. And the thing that hurts the most is that, like, ultimately, it's not, ultimately people, you're responsible in a way, because it's like, even though we were victims of fraud, it's our fans that get hurt. Yeah, it was really tough. However, the good thing that came out of it is that Blackheart Records stepped in and they said, look, we'll manufacture for you guys. You guys just handle mailing them out. But we will do the art and manufacture. And so that helped a lot. So our fans, everybody involved in Pledge, at least got the vinyl or CD. So, they weren't high and dry. It did go into our pockets, tens of thousands of dollars. And that happens to L7 a lot, unfortunately, like back in the past. And, sometimes you just don't, sometimes indie labels, man, they'll pay you, you get statements all the time, and sometimes you don't. And, but the Pledge thing was a disaster, but other bands got screwed probably even more than we did. So, they're no good.
The lesson here is God bless Joan Jett.
God bless Joan Jett. She stepped in, and Blackheart, they then put out a single later of we covered a Joan Jett song called Fake Friends, and they put it out on vinyl for Record Store Day. And so they're very into that. And they did a few videos with supporting Scatter the Rats and all that stuff. So,
all right. So, Donita, thank you so much for joining us here on the Vinyl Guide. You've provided a lot of great information, certainly corrected a lot of my research that I've done here. I'm so excited to have you on the show because L7 back in the CD days, I just jammed so many of the albums, especially Bricks Are Heavy. And now that it's coming back out on vinyl, I can finally have a proper version of it, and a gold version of it, as well. Everyone, Order your copy at l7theband.com. Check their website for their tour dates, and if they're in driving distance of you or somehow you can get to there, go see L7. Incredible band. They're like Donita said, there's a documentary, L7 Pretend We're Dead. It's available on Amazon streaming if you have that. You could always Google it up and find a copy, but it's fascinating as well. And again, Donita, thank you so much for joining us here on the show and being patient with our record nerd questions.
Well, and I'd like to thank all your record nerds out there, because you all keep us busy and give us a reason for continuing to make our art. And it's really important. And we very much appreciate you being into vinyl or whatever your bag is. Cassettes are back, which is crazy. And, but thank you so much for being passionate about music. Music's important. And we are passionate right back at you. We love you. Thank you so much.
We love you too. Thank you. Oh, that was amazeballs. Thank you so much, Donita, for coming on the Vinyl Guide podcast. Again, everyone, check out the 30th anniversary of Bricks Are Heavy on vinyl. Few different pressing options. You can check them out at l7theband.com. And don't forget, there's an extended and high resolution version of this interview up at patreon.com/vinyl guide. Help support this show. That is so much appreciated, and enjoy all the extras up there. And that's it for this episode of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes across your social media. Put them on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter. In fact, if you want to do us a super big time solid, hop up there on iTunes and leave us a positive review. Give us 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 stars. Whatever platform you enjoy this podcast on, if you can leave us a review, say some kind words, that is always appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.